Sarah had always been a bit uneasy around mirrors. She couldn't quite put her finger on it, but something about the way her reflection stared back at her made her skin crawl. As a child, she would often cover the mirrors in her room with blankets or towels before going to sleep. Her parents dismissed it as a phase, chalking it up to her overactive imagination. Now, as an adult living on her own, Sarah had mostly overcome her fear of mirrors. But every once in a while, that eerie feeling would creep back in, and she'd avoid her reflection's gaze. Little did she know that her childhood fears were about to come true in the most horrifying way. One stormy night, as Sarah lay in bed, she heard a soft, rhythmic tapping coming from the direction of her full-length mirror. The sound was faint, but it was enough to send shivers down her spine. She considered that maybe it was just the wind or a tree branch brushing against the window. Yet, as she strained her ears, the tapping grew louder, more deliberate, and closer. Fear tightened her chest as she reached for the lamp on her bedside table, but just as her trembling hand touched the switch, the power went out. The room plunged into darkness, and all Sarah could hear was the torrential rain outside and her own panicked breathing. She fumbled for her phone and activated its flashlight. Slowly, she pointed the beam at the mirror. What she saw in the dim, eerie glow made her heart stop. Her reflection was not her own. It was distorted and twisted, its eyes gleaming with malevolence. It grinned at her, revealing rows of sharp, jagged teeth. "Who are you?" Sarah stammered, her voice quivering. The mirror image continued to grin, and then, with a long, bony finger, it began to tap against the glass. Tap, tap, tap. Sarah watched in horror as the reflection's finger started to emerge from the mirror, pushing through the surface as if it were made of a viscous black liquid. She scrambled out of bed, backing away from the mirror as her pulse raced. The thing in the mirror began to pull itself out, inch by agonizing inch. Sarah grabbed her phone and ran to the door, desperate to escape her own bedroom. But when she turned the knob, it wouldn't budge. She was trapped. As the dark, twisted figure in the mirror continued to emerge, Sarah could see that it was not alone. Other shadowy, distorted figures were clawing their way out, their inhuman forms contorting and writhing. The room filled with a sickening, otherworldly stench as the creatures spilled into her room. Panicking, Sarah tried to find another way out. She glanced at the window, but it was sealed shut by the relentless rain and wind. She was trapped with these nightmarish entities, her only source of light her trembling phone. The things from the mirror moved closer, their eyes fixed on her, hunger and malice in their gaze. Sarah had no choice but to back further into the corner of her room, her back pressed against the cold, unyielding wall. In the growing darkness, the mirror's surface seemed to warp and twist, as if it were a portal to some nightmarish realm. The creatures closed in, their grotesque forms casting long, unsettling shadows on the walls. They hissed and whispered in a language she couldn't understand, but the sheer malevolence in their voices was undeniable. As they drew near, Sarah's fear turned to desperation. She remembered the old superstition that breaking a mirror brought 7 years of bad luck. With trembling hands, she hurled her phone at the mirror, shattering the glass into 1,000 shards. The room was plunged into complete darkness once more, and the creatures let out a cacophony of anguished, otherworldly screams. Frantically, Sarah continued to throw objects at the mirror, each impact accompanied by the sound of shattering glass and the creatures' agonized cries. Finally, the mirror lay in ruins on the floor, and the room fell into a heavy, eerie silence. Gasping for breath and covered in cold sweat, Sarah felt a deep sense of dread. The mirror was gone, but the creatures were nowhere to be found. Had they been banished back to the hellish realm from which they came? Or were they now lurking in the darkness, waiting for the next opportunity to escape? Sarah knew one thing for sure. She would never look into another mirror again, for she had seen the terrors that could lurk just beyond the glass. She was left with a chilling realization that would haunt her for the rest of her days. The reflection in the mirror was not always a mere reflection, and sometimes Someone truly did live on the other side.